Hello everyone. So today we are going to cover another interesting topic, which is introduction to web workers. So web workers are a part of HTML family and we use it for various purposes. In today's session, we are going to understand what web workers are and how to implement them using JavaScript code. So with that in mind, let's start off with the session for the day. Now, if we go through the definition for web workers, then it is pretty simple. It is a basic script which is run in background and it is used to run very complex or time intensive task in the background thread instead of running it on the main thread in JavaScript. This allows us to make sure that the web page does not become unresponsive and the script is run independently of other scripts so that the performance of the page is not impacted. Now, in web workers, there are two main concepts which we need to understand. One is a worker script, which is be able to run the actual task which you want to run in the background. And there are two methods. One is on message and second is post message. And with these two methods, we are able to communicate between web workers and the main JavaScript thread. So with that in mind, let's start off with an example and understand how to do it. So we have index.html here and it is a simple example where what we are going to do is we are going to enter a sum, and when we enter the sum we are going to calculate the sum of digits from 1 to the number, that is a kind of a factorial kind of a thing, and we are going to calculate the sum and we are going to print it into our web page. And this is what the task is. It is a pretty basic task, but we are going to do it using a web worker instead of using a main JavaScript file. So with that in mind, let's jump into the code. So this is the index.html for the code. We have the label, which is enter a number. We have an input with ID input sum. We have a button with ID sum button, which is calculate sum. And we have a div called a sum value on which we want to actually show the output to the user. And then we have the scripts folder here in which we have the main.js, which is the main JavaScript file. And we have worker.js in which we are going to run the actual sum calculation or factorial calculation and return it back to the main.js file. So we have included the main.js file into our index.html using script main.js. Now let's jump into main.js code. So we have written a basic JavaScript code. First is we are taking the sum button, which is the button used to calculate the sum, and we are using document.getElementById to get the sum button reference. Then we are taking the input value, which is the input sum, which is the input in which the value is entered by the user, and we have the output sum, which is the actual div in which we are going to show the output. So we have referenced them using document.getElementById, and we have added a on-click listener on sum button, and on the event we are trying to prevent default. The reason for this is when we click on calculate sum, we don't want the page to refresh. We want to show the actual data to the end user. So that's the overall syntax. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to define the worker. So for that we write const, let's just say my worker is equal to new worker. Then we make a reference to the worker file. So in this case, the absolute path is taken. So we write scripts, then worker.js. So this is where the worker is actually residing in the worker.js. Now we come to the worker.js and we write a function which is perform calculation. So we have the number. So what we can do is we can first define a sum which is initially set to 0. This is the factorial sum. Then we write a for loop starting with I and till the number and I plus plus. And what we can do is we can write sum plus equal to, and we add the I. So it will return the value of the sum from, let's just go with 1 to the number itself, and then we return the sum back. So this is what our worker.js is supposed to do. Now in order to communicate with the worker, what we need to do is we need to first send the event data or the value from the input sum to the worker. So for that, what we do, we first take the input value, which is const input value is equal to input sum dot value. So we are taking the value from the input. Then we are using the worker file itself using my worker. And as I mentioned, there are two methods here which we use. First is post message method, which is used to send the message to the worker. And in this post message, we are going to send the object with number and the input value itself. Then we save the value. Now in the worker, we don't have access to the window object. So we use self as the keyword and we write on message. So on message is the function which is used to take the post message syntax and return the worker. So here also we get the event, and let's just print out the number using const input number is equal to event.data.number. So to access the input number, we write event.data number. Then we perform the actual calculation using const. Sum is equal to perform calculation, pass on the input number. So we will get the sum back. And in order to send a message back to the main thread, we write self dot post message and the sum itself. So this is what the code looks like. Now let's just see what we get. So we write my worker here also. If we want to return the sum back to the main thread, we have written post message. So in order to get that message, we write on message here as well. So we write my worker dot on message. I'm not sure what the syntax or the naming convention is, but we'll figure it out. Then we have a function and we'll get the data here. So we write, so we will console.log event and check what the data is. So now this works. Now let's go back to the page and let's refresh. And we are going to add 10 as the value here. And let's see what the output is. So as you can see, we have the output here, which is 45. So this is what we get in event.data. So we are going to return that to the sum value. So we write output sum dot inner HTML is equal to string, then sum is, then we can write event.data and it's saved. Now if we write something like 10, we get the value which is 45. So this is how the code works. And let's just go with a smaller number like 2. Okay, so we have made a mistake and I think that is this should be less than equal to number, so that number itself gets added. Now we refresh the code and we write 2 again. So it sum is 3, which is correct. Then we write 10 and we get the value which is 55. So this is how the actual code works like. This is basic syntax. So we write the sum of the digits from 1 to the actual number itself. This is not factorial, this is just sum of numbers from 1 to the actual number itself. So this is how the web worker works. We write something like on message, which is used to get the data from the main thread, and we get the data from event.data.actual the value which is passed. For example, we pass the number value in the object here, so we got back the number. Then we performed the calculation and we posted the message back to the main thread. And in the main thread, we wrote on message, and we got the data from the actual data, and we printed out the data in the form of event.data. If you want to like use the same syntax like number, we can send it as number and the sum itself, or we can go with sum. So this is an object now, and we can write something like event.data.sum, and it should work again. As you can see, it works. So either we can post it as an object or individual value. So this is how web workers work using post message and on message syntax. And that's it from my end for today. I hope you got the example. You can learn more about it from the schools as well. But the main syntax in which the web workers work is using on message and post message syntax. And this worker.js which we wrote, this is running on an independent thread than the main thread. So thank you. Have a nice day. Goodbye.